Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to talk about supercars and then classic cars, and a situation that I was in recently where I was lucky enough to have my choice of any reasonable supercar. So I wasn't in a position to go and buy a LaFerrari or a Bugatti Veyron, but I was in a position where I could buy a Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, something along those lines. Relatively late model, not brand new, but relatively late model. And I looked at all the things that would go with supercar ownership and what would supercar ownership actually be like. And in the end, I actually decided to buy a very expensive car, but not one that was what anyone would consider a supercar. It's a classic car, so it's a car that's 50 years old. And we'll get to that, but initially I just want to talk about that, what led to making this decision. So initially the car I wanted was a relatively late model Ferrari, so maybe a 430, probably not a 360. A 430 was the one that I looked at closely, but I was also well and truly in love with the 355. It's always been a favorite, and other than the F40, I think it's probably, to me, the ultimate realistic Ferrari. So when I looked at this period in Ferrari's history and the costs associated with owning one of these cars, and this just doesn't just apply to the Ferraris, it's also true for the Lamborghinis, maybe a little bit less so for the German stuff, but certainly for the Italian stuff, the points I'm about to cover are very, very, very true. So the first thing I looked at was service and maintenance costs, and after doing a lot of reading, I worked out that most people budget somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a year for service and maintenance. Now that's an average, so there could be a year when you only spend $3,000 or $4,000, but there could be a year when you spend $25,000. So as a general guide, people suggested between $10,000 and $20,000 was the average. Now there's obviously going to be people that have had experiences where they spend a lot less than that, and there's going to be experiences where people spend a lot more than that. But as a general rule, $10,000 to $20,000 is the guide. That's obviously a pretty significant cost of ownership, but if you're buying a late model supercar, another very, very high cost of ownership is depreciation. So any asset that is this expensive, even if it only loses a small percentage of its value, it's a lot of money. So the people who are buying these cars new for, in some cases, 500, 600, 700,000, in the first 3 to 5 years, they're losing probably half their value, in some cases a little bit more. So I wasn't prepared to accept that level of depreciation, but I did consider something a little bit late model, still with quite a high level of depreciation, but even in the most conservative estimates, in a 5-year ownership period, you are still looking at losing $100,000 or more. So you've got your service costs, you've got your depreciation, and the third and final point that I'd like to make about supercar ownership is feeling guilty while you're driving a car like this. So if you've got a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and it's got 20 or 15,000 kilometers on it, and you want to drive it, every kilometer you put on that car, two things. One, it's depreciating it. There's no question. Kilometers or miles on these sorts of supercars reduce their value very significantly. The second thing is, these are not cars designed to do huge numbers of kilometers, and they will require high levels of maintenance and service if you want to do a lot of kilometers in them. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's bad in terms of depreciation, and you're also risking potential repair costs. When I thought about what that would mean for me as an owner, I started to get a bit turned off about that ownership experience. So I looked at other cars that are in the same price range, but perhaps will offer a different ownership experience. And where I really got interested was when I started looking at classic cars. Now, a classic car is generally defined as anything over than about 30 years old. The range I looked at was more in the 50-year-old range, because those cars have already appreciated a lot in value, so they've already gone up quite high. And the kind of cars I looked at was the E-Type Jaguar, the Porsche 356, and the Mercedes SL. And in the end, after doing a lot of research, I went out and bought a 1968 280 SL Mercedes. So the nickname for that model is the Pagoda. For those that don't know it, you almost certainly will know the 300 SL Gullwing, which is the one with the doors that come up like that. That's the original Gullwing. This car is the successor to that model. So when that model finished production, at the time was replaced by the 230 SL. Now the 230 SL was a lot softer than the 300 SL Gullwing. It wasn't as race inspired as the 300 SL, but it was a bit more of an all-rounder. So it offered a higher level of comfort and lower servicing costs, and was just generally speaking a softer car. That was good and bad. So the 300 SLs, for those that don't know, are selling between 1.5 and 4.5 million. And the Pagodas, the Mercedes 280 SLs, anywhere between 100 and 400,000, just depending on the car's history. So I'm not going to get into exactly how much I paid for mine. It wasn't at the bottom end, it wasn't at the top end, it was somewhere in between. It was well into the six figures, but I was lucky enough to get a combination that was very unusual. So mine's a manual, which is very rare, and it's also a three-seater, so it has a sideways seat in the back, which I'll include a picture of in this video. Why did I buy this car? Now, the first reason is that it is not a depreciating asset like a supercar. It is an appreciating asset. So I've calculated roughly that I've earned $30,000 to $50,000 in appreciation in the value of this car. So I bought it around six to 8 months ago, and by conservative numbers, looking at what's happening in the market, I would say at least a minimum of $40,000 to $50,000, and potentially more in terms of the asset growth. Obviously, an appreciating asset is more attractive than a depreciating asset, but there's actually more to it than that. Now, the second thing is that in Australia, some really good incentives are offered for classic cars. So my car's registered on historical plates. The total cost of registration for the year is $90. That is it. The one drawback is that I can only drive it 60 times a year. I cannot drive it more than 60 times a year, and I have to keep a logbook for every time I drive it. Look, it's a weekend car. It's never going to be a car I'm going to use all the time. That gives me enough for once every weekend, and then some spare drives. And I find it's enough. I haven't driven the car now in 3 weeks because of the weather, but when there is good weather, I'll be able to take it out on Saturday and Sunday as well. So I look forward to that time. But another important reason or motivation for me to buy a classic car rather than a supercar was that in the case of my Mercedes, it's a period from Mercedes history where they are inherently reliable. So it's a time when Mercedes-Benz built their reputation. So the car is incredibly reliable. It's from 1968, and it has four-wheel disc brakes, it has power steering, and it has fuel injection, and all very, very reliable. Now, importantly for the SL model that I own, a lot of the mechanical parts are common to other models from the period. So a lot of the engine parts, gearbox, diff, some of the suspension components, some of the braking components, they are shared with other models from the same time. So what that means is that I needed to do a brake booster on it recently when the brake booster failed. The brake booster was $160, that is it. And then I just had to get it fitted, and the brakes are repaired like new. That's because that brake booster is common across all of the cars for that period, and there are thousands of cars, not SLs, but there are thousands or tens of thousands of 4-doors and hard-top cars from the same era that use the same brake booster. So the repair costs are so cheap, it's amazing. Because it's not a highly strung supercar, I don't feel guilty when I'm driving it. I don't feel as though, if my car has another, it's in miles, but if it had another 20,000 miles on it, it would not reduce its value at all. Literally would not make a difference to the cost, to the value of the car. That is certainly not true in the case of a supercar. But more than that, because the car is designed with a different philosophy to a Ferrari or Lamborghini, and because the car is reliable, I don't feel guilty, or I don't feel as though I'm taking a risk every time I drive it. Where my car is incredibly expensive is in body panels. Headlights, thousands and thousands of dollars each. A grille, again, $3,000 to $4,000 for a grille. If you were to have an accident in the car and it was uninsured, you could easily get a $20,000 to $30,000 repair bill for a very minor accident. So don't be fooled into thinking these cars are cheap to own, because they can be very expensive if you don't manage them correctly. I'm obviously fully insured, so I would never take that risk. But when you have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Porsche or an Audi R8 and it's out of warranty period, engine repair costs are not covered by insurance. So you are up for the total expense if you are unlucky enough to have an engine failure or something like that. You're potentially, in some cases, looking at $50,000, $60,000 or more in some of these supercars. So my I guess another point that I want to make is about sense of occasion. So part of what attracted me about a supercar was the sense of occasion. It's getting in it and feeling special. Now, feeling as though you're in something other than your daily car, you're in something that has a sense of occasion. And I can tell you firsthand that this 1968 Mercedes has as much, or if not more, road presence than any supercar. I'll get a video, but I have not taken the car for a drive without many people taking photos of it. People come up and they pose with it and they take photos. I'm including a couple of photos of the car in this video so you can get an idea what I mean. Constantly people making comments about it, and of course that's a good feeling, but I didn't buy it for those people. I bought it for me, and it feels very special when I take it for a drive. It has every bit of the sense of occasion. Now, it doesn't have the performance, that's obvious. It doesn't have that same performance, but it's hard to use the level of performance you get from a supercar on the road anyway. So I don't feel as though I'm missing out anything there. I probably wouldn't even track a supercar if I did have it, for fear of it breaking. But I guess the purpose of this video is just for people who are considering buying a late model performance car, not even a supercar, to potentially look at some of these older cars as good investments, because there are a whole generation of cars which are about to become very valuable, and I'm going to cover this in another video, but there are a whole generation of cars which are going to appreciate in value. Now, final thought just before I cut the video off. When you are looking at classic cars, or cars generally, you need to understand depreciation. Now, the simplest way to explain depreciation is that depreciation is a cross section of a bathtub. So when the car's new, it starts at a high price. After you buy the car, it reduces in value over about 20 years. It will depreciate until the point where it hits the bottom of the bathtub, and then it flatlines, and it doesn't really go up and it doesn't really go down, and that's at about 25 years old, 20 to 25. Then what happens at around 28 to 30 years, it starts to come up in value. And eventually it will be worth as much as it was when it was new. And in some cases, if you're very lucky, it'll be worth a lot more than it was when it was new. As is the case with the Mercedes 280 SL that I own. It is a lot more than it was when it was brand new. So when you're looking at buying a classic car, consider the bathtub scale. Where is this car on this scale? So if you're buying a car that's 5 to 10 years old, it's still got a pretty significant amount of depreciation. If you're buying a car at about 25 years old, which is the perfect time to buy a classic car, you're either going to have no depreciation, or you will get a small level of appreciation. Now, if you look at cars that are 30 years old, they are appreciating fairly rapidly. I can name a few examples, but if you just look at cars like the E30s are on the way up, there's no question. The M3s are in the hundreds of thousands, and even the 6-cylinder models are in the tens of thousands now. So a few years ago, I remember not that long ago, I had one and I sold it for $2,000, and admittedly it did need a bit of work, but that same car now would be worth, I don't know, I'm just taking a guess, but probably $8,000 or $9,000. So percentage wise, that's a huge increase, and these cars still have a long way to go. So I just put this video together so people who are considering buying a 5-year-old WRX, maybe there's some other options out there that would be a bit of a more wise investment and probably offer in some ways a more unique driving experience. Have a think about it. If you've got any questions or if you've got any suggestions, please post them up in the comments, and I'll do my best to come back to you and give you the most honest answer I can. I'm going to put together another video outlining what I think the next series of classic cars will be. I've got some really strong thoughts around it, and I think there's some really good opportunities at the moment for people who are paying attention. So I'll get that video up this week, but again, thanks for watching. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments, and thank you.